Welcome to JK Philly. We're talking about Philly sports. Let's get into it. We can honestly just jump right into it. All of Philadelphia. We're talking about the Sixers. We're talking about the Phillies. Sometimes we're going to talk about the Eagles and most likely not talk about the Union or the Flyers unless we got somebody in who wants to talk about it. We're going to get into talking about the Sixers, but we got to talk about Karl Anthony Towns since we haven't talked about him, I don't think, in the text chat. But what do you think about that? How does that make the Knicks look?
I think it makes the Knicks better.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the losers are probably the Timberwolves.
See, I was thinking that too until I was listening to some people on like Reddit and some other like discords basically talking about him and saying like DiVincenzo could be another option for them and just having like one standard big. Um, I mean, DiVincenzo wasn't a bum last year, but he also wasn't like he's not going to be the best player on the team anyway.
Yeah, but my thing is you're taking a lot. You're taking like Karl Anthony Towns. He has them games where you get frustrated with him, but he's a very good player.
Right.
I don't Dante DiVincenzo and Mister Hijack the offense. Julius Randle is a good replacement for that
Yeah.
because man, Julius Randle is he's a weird like it's like an isolation scoring big man that you don't
Right.
see a lot.
I
And
mean,
offense
yeah.
never seen low with him.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to see how he fits in really and see what's gonna happen with Ant and see how Gobert and who their backup big is gonna be or how that's gonna look. But I definitely think the Knicks definitely won that trade. But still, in terms of being Philadelphia and worrying about the Sixers and what we're gonna do, I still feel like we matched up well against them last year. We were all just hurt, or Embiid was mostly hurt. But now we have a better bench, another better player. Hopefully, Embiid will be healthy. We match up well against the Knicks, so I'm really not worried as a Sixers fan if we see them in the playoffs again either.
I'm less worried now with the addition of Paul George because the big problem was one of your big supposed big players is making $180 million and giving you 2 points a game.
Right.
I think Paul George instead of Tobias Harris in that series, we're probably looking at the Sixers moving on in that series,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
probably all the way to the conference finals where we would probably eventually lose to the Celtics.
It's so hard to think about last season knowing that really it's like yeah we would have had to play the Celtics and that probably would have been hard, but we could have definitely made our way to the Eastern Conference Finals last year just because of the injuries that everybody had and inevitably going up against either the Bucks or the Pacers. Like we would have smoked either of them healthy with a healthy Embiid and we would have really finished that Knicks game or Knicks series in like really like 5 if he was fine. But
I feel like a broken record talking about how far we should have gotten every year.
I know, man. We'll see. Well, I pray on maybe Paul George will do something, and hopefully his playoff performance history doesn't affect us in a negative way, and Embiid can take over. It helps. At least whatever he can do can help alleviate what Embiid and Maxi need, and just give them that time off. So then it's not just them two. But we'll see.
Yeah, no,
Basically,
you've vastly upgraded your third option over
right.
Tobias Harris now because Tobias wasn't even the third option. It was arguably Oubre
Mm-hmm.
for some stretches of the season.
Yeah, that trade is crazy. I think it's just crazy because he's been there for a long time. But overall, now that he's coming to the East, it's making the East more stacked. Like it's not just a walk in the park league to the second round at least, and then you
Mhm.
actually start playing some competition. So, um,
Yeah, because with Wiggins being out of there so quickly,
mm-hmm.
that really was the first piece of that rebuild still there because it
Yeah,
was it was supposed to be Cat and Wiggins, and then they got out of the Wiggins thing pretty early,
right.
and he's now you're going all in on Anthony Edwards. He's got to be the star that
Yeah,
seems to be becoming, but he's got to take even another step this year because, like I said, he lost a lot of scoring and rebounding and looked a very good player with Cat.
Yeah, I don't blame him for wanting to put it all in on Anthony Edwards. I think he's gonna be a beast there anyway. But it's just like, do you think, I don't know what the reasoning, or if it's like money or time on their contract or something like that, but do you think that they should have tried to, you think they would have got the same trade value if they sent Rudy instead of Cat? Or do you
No,
think it was a difference between like play style, or, you know?
no, I think Cat's looked at as the bigger star.
Yeah.
I think Gobert at this point, Gobert is what he is.
Yeah.
I think, I think he's a little underrated,
Yeah.
just by it seems other players in the league,
Right.
because he does bring a lot to a team. But I think
We're talking about Cat, or we're talking about Gobert?
Gobert.
Yeah.
I think if I could trade for one or the other, I would try to get Cat.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was watching Gilbert Arenas podcast, and they were literally just talking about, who did they just get? I think they were just talking about the Knicks overall. And it's like, you forget about Mikal Bridges getting drafted there, or not drafted there, but getting traded there too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that team's gonna be that team's gonna be wild. And they were just like, it was Julius's team before Jalen Brunson came in. Obviously, he got hurt, and then he took over. And then Gilbert Arenas was like, the only way to make this better is to, Jalen Brunson's got to go out of his way to say like it's still Julius Randle's team or something like that. But it's just funny how literally like a week after I watched that podcast, it's like, oh, he got traded. So I mean, that was
Yeah,
inevitable though.
yeah. I think their plan was always to get Randall out of there
Yeah.
after Brunson's explosion last year. You kind of knew, especially bringing in Bridges, you're you were moving on from the Randall era,
Right.
short
Yeah.
lived as it was.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that's the most we can talk about him, and we'll see how that looks for next year coming up and playing against him. I'm sure those are going to be some fun Sixers games to go to, watching them match up. Even with the new pieces that we got, those should be really good series. But when I originally made our timeline going back and forth of everything that we were going to talk about, the Sixers arena was something that was popping at the time, so I just felt the need to add it. Um, Obviously, talking about it now, the mayor came out and said, like, we're 100% going to be in Philly. Like, we're not going to Camden. We're staying right here in Center City. This is our plan. And my original questions were going to be like, how do you feel about if we do go to Camden? Do you think that's going to be annoying for a lot of Sixers fans? Do you think we're going to hate that? Or do you think it's going to be perceived as like a good, fresh start for them, or, stuff like that? But how would you have felt, I guess, if we did go to Camden and that was the plan?
Um, I personally didn't want them to go to Camden.
Yeah.
I I didn't react. I think some people were reacting as if like they were going to become the New Jersey 76ers or something, like they were going to lose the Philadelphia tag or something.
Right.
I don't think people understand geographically how close it was still going to be.
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway from this is, and I know it's a long way away, like it's years away before they move. I love where their stadium is now.
Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest takeaway. I'm sick that it's leaving where it is now. I love having the all the sports teams right there in one little complex. It's easy to get to
Yeah.
from like where we are, or
Mm-hmm.
if you're living in Philly, it's just very convenient. So I don't want them to leave it, but it's a
Yeah.
while away.
Yeah. It's, what, 6, 7 years, 2031.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. I like, even having conversations with people, and when me and my girlfriend went to Boston and we went to a Celtics game, just in the area that was in, it kind of felt like what it would look like in Center City, because the TD Garden, if I'm not mistaken, is just like, it's in their city, but it's in like some city with tall buildings and stuff around it, and you're going down just one regular city street, and it's super crammed, and there's parking, but it's under the stadium, so you have to like wait in a 2-lane road to then hopefully get in that right lane to then go into the stadium, and then go down like 10 stories deep to then come back all the way up, to then go, like, if you're sitting all the way up on the 200 300 level, now you're going up 10 more flights, and then 3 more flights, and it's just like, getting into it was a nightmare. And if that's how it's going to be in Center City, it's just gonna be a nightmare going to these games. But at
Yeah,
least we can spend these last couple years at the Wells Fargo and enjoy. It's so easy to get in there. Like even when we went to games, just driving right off the highway into a huge parking lot and then just walking right up to it. It's so simple. I don't know
it's so
why.
nice, it's so convenient.
Yeah, like even
I don't
even
think
the
people.
Eagles too. Yeah, the Eagles and the Phillies. It's just it's so easy. So I don't know.
Yeah, like traffic aside, because there's always going to be traffic with those. I don't think people understand how nice it is. Like there could be a Phillies and Eagles game going on the same day, and there is plenty of parking for
Right.
both of those games. Like it's besides sitting in traffic for a little bit, there really isn't much of a downside to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and already going into the city of Philadelphia with the parking situation, just doing whatever in Philadelphia is already horrendous. So now you're going to add it in Center City. You're going to add more parking and it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
even more difficult. Like it's like, "Oh, I'm not going to park in their parking lot. I'm just fine parking." It's like, "Okay, you're going to be 12 blocks away from the stadium then. Have fun walking."
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah, but yeah, I was sort of open to the idea. Obviously, I would have rather than be in Philly instead of taking that longer commute for us because we're not right in the center of Philly. Um, but the way that they were describing it, of like we got it on a big area. I think they said it was supposed or it was like a old prison that they broke down. So it was just like a huge land that they were going to build on top of them. Like that would be cool. Like if you make it seamless into like you're making another somewhat Wells Fargo where it's just easy to park in and easy to walk up to. I'm like, I don't hate that idea. I would rather have the same thing a little bit farther than trying to get into the city, but I'm started warming up to the idea of keeping it in the city anyway. It is what it is at that point, but
Mm-hmm.
I found this other post the other day on Instagram. They basically just wrote up a little summary on what Mayor Sherelle Parker talked about in some meetings and conferences about the agreement with the Sixers in the stadium. She was basically saying she confirmed it. Says the deal includes a 50 million community benefits agreement that features investments aimed at preserving and strengthening Chinatown. Um, she specifically said it's not going to be in Chinatown, but it's going to be adjacent. Who knows what that means? But yeah, $1.3 billion to build 76 place project without city funding. And it'll keep the Sixers in Philadelphia until 2061.
Yeah,
Right in the
like
center
that
of
ain't
Philly.
cheap.
Not coming
Ready to
from
pay
the
for
city
it?
though. That's
No,
taxpayer
no.
dollars.
Yo, we paying
We
for it,
paying
baby.
for
Can't
that.
wait. Can't
No,
wait.
shoot, I'm not paying for it, but my people are. But no, that's kind of crazy. She said she worked to get approval from the city and governor during her time as a councilwoman, and while that didn't happen, she is determined to make that happen and believes the new arena ups their position for a WNBA team as well in Philadelphia. So I know there's been a lot of talk with who just got teams. Golden State just got a team. I think Toronto just got a team. And I think it
Yeah,
was
I
somebody else just got one too, but I don't know why they didn't make a Philly team. If that's the reason why of just not having space or like an arena for it, that's crazy. But I'm ready for a WNBA team.
yeah, I've been saying for years. I was surprised there wasn't a Philly WNBA team.
Yeah.
All the other major markets
Hmm.
seem to have one.
DC DC has one. New York's got one.
Yep,
Who else is near us that has one? Chicago,
Chicago's got the Sky.
the
Yep.
Sky. Like it's all around us. I think
I
even
was going to say Indiana.
yeah,
Indiana's kind of close. They
it's
got one.
yeah, it's crazy that Philly doesn't have one and Canada's getting one before Philly. I don't get
Right.
that. But that's besides the point. I'm ready for a WNBA team. It's probably not going to come soon, but hopefully by the time that we have a new stadium or something, we'll be getting some more talks in.
We need to hurry up so we can get Juju Watkins on the Philly team.
Was she was a freshman last year, right?
Yep, should be sophomore this year.
And it's common that girls play their whole year or like play their whole college career basically before they go to the
Um,
W.
yes, and especially now with the NIL deals because
Mhm.
a lot of these girls. especially a bigger name like Juju Watkins,
Right.
who's probably going to be one of the bigger, with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese being gone this year. She probably is the face of college
Right. Yeah. 100%.
basketball for women to start. And you're making more off them NIL deals than you are going to the WNBA. Like,
Okay.
maybe not with sponsorships and everything at some point, but that them kids are making good. Them star kids in college, man, they're making good money on the NIL now.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have enough time to get a team by then to get her, but we can hope for the future and see what happens. But let's move more into just talking about the Sixers as the team. Obviously, we talked about a little bit when we were talking about the Karl Anthony Towns trade and how we're going to match up with them with people like Paul George and Maxey and everybody like that. But let's talk about the rest of the people that we got on the team. I'm just going to go over the new players that we got. We obviously got our two rookies, Adem Bona and Jared McCain. And then we also obviously still have Ricky Council that got signed to his deal, I believe, last year in the summer. Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson, Caleb Martin, KJ Martin signed a deal, I believe, in the summer. We got Yabu Sele. And then we got our two-way guys, Jeff Downton, Justin Edwards, and Lester Quiones, I believe is how you spell it or pronounce his last name. I don't know if you know them. And then the Exhibit 10 deals, they got Max Fielder and Judah Mintz. I'm liking this team so much better than last year, not even just because of Paul George, but just because of our bench.
The
I feel
depth,
like
the depth, so much
it's
better.
so much better, and we can actually compete with guys and not let Maxey drown out there or just let our Sixers bench drown when Maxey needs to take a break after playing for 38 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, especially having a legitimate backup center again. You know, when the playoffs come around, you're not going to be able to afford to have Embiid have long stretches on the bench. But last year, you couldn't afford him to go to the bench at all.
right, right,
He went to the bench, and you went from a playoff team to probably the worst team in the NBA with Embiid off the court.
100%. Yeah,
And like you said, you got Maxey out there trying to do too much, getting all of the defensive focuses on him.
mm-hmm.
They're praying that he kicks it to somebody else because they'll deal with Buddy Hield chucking
Yeah,
up threes. Because outside of that one game, he was not very good in the playoffs.
right, right. The playoffs, yeah, the playoffs is where obviously it really hurt us, but just during the season, like even in the beginning of the season when we had Embiid and Maxey, and then Embiid would have to sit where Embiid was hurt. So then you got Tobias Harris, you got Pat Bev, and you may have Paul Reed, Maxey, and then they didn't have Melton out there. I couldn't even tell you who the other guy was, but having Maxey do whatever he's doing, get into the lane, and then two people coming from the wings crowding him plus his defender. So now he's just in a triangle, kicking out to any one of those guys and can't be dependable to hit a corner three. So
Nope. And now though,
yeah, 100%. You got Caleb Martin out there. You got Eric Gordon. You got Paul George sitting out there. It's like you got people that can knock down open shots, and at least some people to come back up. I actually really like. We'll talk about more players in specific, but just as a side point, I really like Andre coming back. He didn't have a terrible year over in on the Bulls, but he was pretty solid over there. And then even having our rookie Adem Bona, like watching him in the summer league, yes, it's summer league, but still, like he was still hooping. He was playing great. He was defensive player of the year while he was at UCLA, I believe is where he played. So he was a bucket. I'm happy with what they got going on with their extra players, but obviously I think it would be very messed up if we did not talk about Paul George and how we think that he's going to affect our team in a positive light. So I'll let you talk a little bit about him. Obviously, we got some stuff to say about some guys, about one or two guys for probably both of us, and we'll give a response to them and see what we think about them. But obviously, I'll have you start talking with Paul George, and we can go from there.
yeah, I mean, you have a legitimate big three again since James Harden left, because you didn't last year. You had Embiid, Maxey, and the crew.
Right.
It did, like I said, at parts of the season, Kelly Oubre was your third option, and I like Kelly Oubre. I'm glad he's back.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can add a lot to the team, but I don't want to go into a playoff run as Kelly Oubre as my third option. I don't think Kelly Oubre wants to be the third option.
Right.
I think he's good just doing his role.
Mm-hmm.
After all these years in the NBA, he's probably just glad he's playing some meaningful basketball. He's been on a lot of bad teams.
Right.
Paul George, playoff struggles aside, I mean, you're getting a great player. You're getting a guy who's been in MVP conversations a couple of years in his career.
Mm-hmm.
A guy who's been there and done that. You know he's had his struggles, but the man seems to be in the playoffs every year. He's never on teams that aren't going to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have too many deep runs on his resume, but them Pacers teams, they had some good stretches. They you run into that machine that was LeBron.
I mean,
Uh,
even
you know,
OKC, he was hooping,
yeah.
and they were
Mm-hmm.
dominant.
I liked watching him better on the Thunder. I liked the little thing him and Russ had going.
I just typed in Paul George clips, and the first thing that came up was him in OKC. It's just like Paul George ISO moments, and I was just watching it for like 4 minutes. I'm like, yeah, this man was hooping. He's still hooping today, but yeah, like in OKC was different. But yeah, I'm definitely liking Paul George. I think obviously we want to talk about playoffs, and we want him to perform, and we want him to do what he's supposed to do, being an all caliber player. I think it really, what the conversation should also be though, is just how he's going to perform during the regular season and just providing that amount of time to give Embiid. Obviously, Embiid's a ticking time bomb for when he's going to get hurt every year. So if that's going to be in the beginning of the season or if it's going to be towards the end, it's just we need to be ready for that. And given and rotating minutes, obviously Paul George's not playing the center, but just like relieving some of that duty to give to Paul George so Embiid doesn't have to back somebody down every time Maxey misses like 3 shots in a row. He's like, all right, let me get a quick bucket. It's like, let me pass it out to Paul George now and let him go to work. So relieves pressure for everybody for that big three, but I'm liking him.
And I think it even just, if knock on wood, you hope it doesn't happen, but it's at this point, when Embiid gets hurt,
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel hopeless. Like every time Embiid's gone out for the last however long it's been, you just felt like it was like, okay, well, hopefully we just don't fall out of playoff contention and he
Yeah.
gets healthy by the playoffs. Because last year watching the Sixers without Embiid was a chore.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
was
chore watching them games, man. It was
100%. Hopefully we can stay healthy. Hopefully you can make a good run. So moving on from Paul George, who else do you got that we can talk about?
I'm big on I really like the draft pick of Jared McCain.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were talking about earlier, Maxey needing more floor spacing when he's running the offense out there.
Okay.
You got a kid that shot over 40% from three in college, took over, I think, on like 10 shots a game. Like, I think over half of them were threes. So
Yeah.
it's not like he was taking a one or two a game and shooting 40%. He was shooting them at a pretty high volume, especially for college,
Right.
and hitting them at a high rate. 14 plus points a game in college is very good. He's not the biggest facilitator. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't in college. He doesn't jump off the page with assists, but he also doesn't turn the ball over a ton,
Mm-hmm.
which you worry about them guys who can't really play make and turn the ball over. He doesn't seem to be that. So
Yeah.
I love the pick with him. I'm hoping the guy we added from the French team, whose name I struggle with,
Yabu
uh,
Sele.
Yabusele.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun name, but didn't add much when he was in the NBA, but
Yeah.
that was a while ago at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Has got some big scoring seasons overseas, and I don't think we're asking him to come over here and do a lot. I think he's going to be an end of the bench guy, but
Yeah.
if you can get some minutes out of him and he can add something to the team, that'd be nice.
For sure. Yeah, pointing on Jared McCain. I don't know why I am, because I haven't watched a lot of his college games. I watched a lot of highlights from what's it called? Summer League.
Okay.
Yeah, from Summer League. And Jared McCain, he was like playing all right. I don't hate Jared McCain. I just don't know if it's going to translate well enough for him to get like sufficient minutes, or if he's going to get buckets. I think he just needs to prove it, to be honest. Like, obviously he's coming in smaller. He's going to be responsible for a little bit more if they, like our first draft pick out of our two, 16 overall. Um, he's really just got to prove it to me. I just got to see it from my own eyes. I'm not really 100% bought in yet on him. Um, really because of his size. Like he can shoot the lights out, yeah, but if you're going to be a liability on defense and you can't go get a bucket when you're missing a couple threes, then what do we need you for? Um, I don't know how he's going to fit in with Maxi or how he's going to fit in on the bench if he's just going to be our six-man point guard, if that's how they're going to do it, or however they make the lineups go for the bench. Um, we'll see. I still got to see it from him a little bit. Yabu Sele, I kind of feel the same way you do. He wasn't great in the NBA when he was in a while ago, but he produced a little bit. And I was listening to the Olympics when I was watching the game. I'm like, I remember that name a little bit. So for it to clock in my head, I would assume that he might have done well a little bit on the Celtics in terms of maybe defense, because his offensive statistics didn't show that, but maybe he was a little bit better on the defensive end. But in the Olympics, he was like a solid role player. I think he was scoring like
Yeah,
14 points a game and
yeah, yeah.
not shooting well, but can get a bucket and play defense. It looked like, so could be solid
hmm
for us.
Yeah, he didn't he didn't play much either when he was here. I think 6 or 7 minutes a game for the
Okay,
2 seasons he was here. So it was a very small sample size.
okay, that makes more
How
sense.
much
Yeah,
how much you expect a guy to do it, and I'm sure them 6 or 7 minutes were not coming in big moments
right,
in games. He
right.
was probably playing at the end of blowouts right before halftime.
Yeah, I like those two. I mean, we'll see what happens with Jared. We'll see what happens with Yabu Sele. I really want to talk about two players. And there's actually three players before I go into talking about these two that I don't know if I ever said to you, but I know myself, I was always like three players that I always wanted on my team because I was just like, yeah, they do well. Like, they're not great, but I think they would do all right on our team is Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, and Eric Gordon. I've always said, yeah, I would want them on my team. Like Eric Gordon when he was in Houston, I'm like, he'd be solid for us. And Caleb Martin, even when he was with the Hornets, I think he was waived, but I was like, he doesn't seem like he's too bad. Like we can pick him up. He's got some size and he can play a little bit. Like he's a role player. And then Kelly Oubre was just because of all the history that he has on all the different teams with being athletic and everything like that. So I was happy when we got Kelly Oubre. But just starting with Caleb Martin, I'm looking at him as another Kelly Oubre for us if he can produce well enough. Just going over statistics that I saw that in Miami last year, he averaged 11.6 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, and shot 34.9% from three. But I knew Caleb Martin was a solid role player for them, especially when they went to the finals. So I like having him. I think he's a good pickup. What do you think about him? Do you like Caleb Martin? I don't think we really talked about either Caleb Martin or Eric Gordon that much between each other, so I don't know how you feel about them.
I'm a big Caleb Martin guy.
Yeah.
I think Caleb Martin's going to add a lot. I think he does well exactly what we need and why we brought him in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's nice watching Caleb Martin because I remember Caleb Martin in college
Mm.
playing on, I believe, Nevada.
Nevada, yeah.
As, yeah, and him and his twin brother both on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
I know his brother had a little time in the league too. I'm not sure if he still is in the league. Watching the two of them at Nevada
Yeah.
during like tournament runs and those were fun teams. So watching them both in the NBA now is kind of cool.
Right.
But no, I'm Caleb Martin was probably my favorite player we got outside of Paul George, obviously in the
Right.
offseason.
Right.
Eric Gordon, not as excited for Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon's always been known as shooting threes and playing good perimeter defense.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting up there in age, man. It
For
gets
sure.
harder and harder to play good perimeter defense as you get older, and them kids keep getting quicker.
For sure. 100%.
So, but 8 points per game last year, man. If he can come off the bench and hit 2, 3 threes a game for us,
Yeah.
it's really all we're asking for him. Shoot him at a high clip.
If you could just come in, play solid defense whenever you are in for a little stint, hit a couple threes for us, he's going to be that option when Maxi is driving. We're putting you straight in the corner. Don't go anywhere else. You're right there. That's your spot. That's your
Don't
home.
move.
Don't move at all. We're gonna get you to the basket. I was just watching another clip of Austin Rivers. He was talking about when he had his stint on Houston when he was playing with James Harden. He was like, he was saying about a conversation that he had with him. He was like, you go sit in the corner. Don't move at all. If they come, like, don't worry about your man coming over to get help, because I'm a bucket. I'm gonna get there, or I'm gonna get fouled, or I'm gonna pass it out to you, and you're a 3-point shooter that's gonna be sitting in the corner getting the shot anyway. So I kind of think of that as the same way of like, put Eric Gordon over there, and obviously don't keep Caleb Martin in the corner, but just, you can drive. Maxey is going to drive. He's going to beat everybody at the top of the key and get to the hole. And if he doesn't get to the hole because there's help, we got you all two on the corners. Don't move. Obviously, he's 35 years old, so him attempting to get some rebounds and getting in there and getting some, hard buckets, I don't perceive
Not gonna
happening.
happen.
But, I liked it when he was over in Houston with James Harden. Just his game when he was in Houston made me just like him so much more. And even with his stint, the Suns last year, obviously they have so many options, so you could kind of relate to whatever he did last year with the Suns is most likely what he's going to do with us this year, if not a little bit less, because of
Yeah.
the talent and all the new people coming in. So people are going to start trying to find their hierarchy in terms of who got draft, or not who got drafted, but who got signed, and your player performance and stuff like that, and who you mesh with the best. So we'll see how they go, but I'm really liking both of them. I'm liking the pickups. You got any other points with either of them, or any other guys that you wanted to somewhat talk about?
I'd like to see Council take another step this year. I
Mm-hmm.
thought he really earned his contract last year.
Mm-hmm.
You always wonder with those guys that bounce between the NBA and the G League if they'll ever actually add anything to the team. But
Yeah.
Council is the not the top. Like, you hope for a guy that comes out of the G League, like a Reggie Jackson, who we have now too. Reggie Jackson came out of the G League back in the day and became a very, very good player.
Right.
I don't think he's quite on the level of that, but he's, if you can get what Ricky Council gave you last year out of a guy who you developed in your G League, that's great. You love that.
Right. Yeah, and even last year I was telling you I went to, what was that, 2 years ago when they won the G League finals with Jaden Springer and Mac McClung and them, and I went to the first game after them winning the championship, and they were playing the Knicks G League team, and it was Ricky Council, it was Terquavion Smith, and it was, I forget his first name, but his last name was Smart. I think it was something with a J. I don't know. But those guys, I was looking at them like, okay, they all got signed, I think, 2 ways last year or 2 years ago. And I was like, okay, like one of them is going to hit, because Ricky Council literally was dunking from the free throw line almost every single time he touched the ball when I went to that game. Shout out to Quavion Smith. He had like a 40 piece when I went to that game. Just like really good shooter. Even when he was playing some games with the Sixers last year, he wasn't, obviously he's not great, but he was hitting a couple threes and he looked confident getting to the hole and everything like that. I don't think he's with us anymore though. I think he waived them or something, and I think he's with the Jazz right now, but shout out to Quavion Smith. That's my guy. But other than that, wrapping up everything with the Sixers and the guys that we got right now, just as an intro of like our feelings and how we feel about the team and stuff like that, I think we're in a pretty good spot. Definitely would say at least top 5. I think a lot of years before this, I would consistently say top 3. I think I gotta put a little bit more respect on more teams in the East now, and at least say top 5, just because of, I don't know how we're gonna mesh, obviously, and injuries and everything like that for this year specifically, but I would like to say top 5, would like to be top 2, but we'll see how that plays out.
No, East definitely looks like it's going to be tougher this year.
Yeah, for sure.
See what the Pacers look full year of Halliburton and Siakam look like too.
Yeah. And talking about the Pacers, they just picked up Jahlil Okafor to their training camp. Training camp. I don't know if they signed him fully, but yeah. Shout out Jahlil Okafor.
One of our long list of frustrating top picks. I wanted him to be good too, man. Man, watching him at Duke in
Hmm.
the tournament, you want to talk about an unstoppable force. Duke just fed him the ball in the paint, and it was a bucket
Yeah,
every time. Yeah, every time.
he was too good for his time, or not in his right era, or something like that. I heard somebody saying that the other day, but hopefully he does
He
well.
was.
All right, let's move into. We've been talking about the Sixers for a little bit. Let's talk about overall NBA, a little bit more fun topic. Getting into the jerseys that we just talked about a little bit earlier and went over to just establish what jerseys that we like. First, talk about before we talk about any other classic edition jerseys. Well, do you like our Reading Terminal Market jerseys that we had last year compared to what our new classic edition jerseys look like this year with just the plain white and the rainbow letters and everything like that?
I don't hate either of them, but I'm definitely excited to see these ones this year. I really like the white.
Yeah.
I think the white looks good. I don't think they've missed on many of the city editions. I've liked a lot of their city editions.
Yeah.
You get people. It always feels split. Some years you got more people that are more negative about it, but there's always people that hate. They just absolutely hate the jerseys for some reason. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've done too bad personally.
Right. Yeah, I like the white too. I was looking at recent jerseys that we had.
Boathouse Row.
Yeah, yeah, when they had those jerseys where it was just black, and then those were I like
Mm,
those jerseys even
I
though
like those too.
obviously I just like black jerseys, so when we have a different alternative to blue and white, it's cool. But other
Can't wait
than
to see the guy jerseys, man. One day.
so what was
They,
that report? Did they say that it was going to come next year or in a
yeah, I
couple of
think they were
years?
teasing them. I think they were teasing them for the future. I'm not sure if it's next year, but I know it's not this year. They were teasing them for the future.
We don't deserve black jerseys if we get knocked out of the first round. I'll say that. We don't deserve those AI jerseys. It would be nice,
They
but
gotta,
we don't deserve them.
they got to make the finals run like AI before they bring them back.
For sure, 100%. And I'd be fine with that. And so we would have to wait until then, and then I would be fine because then it feels like we earned them. But we'll go over the other jerseys. They released them all on a website of just all the new jerseys that they released, showing us all of them. So I'll give you my top three jerseys in the East plus one West jersey, and then you'll do the opposite. You'll give me your top three West jerseys, and then give me one East. So outside of the Sixers, I like Brooklyn's jersey. I like the Indiana Pacers jersey, and I like the Cavs jersey. But I think if I did have to put them 1 through 3, it's definitely Indiana, Cavs, Brooklyn, only because I'm pretty sure the Indiana jersey is the same as last year, but it's just white, unless I'm
Okay.
mistaken. But I love the jersey that they had when they were playing like in the in-season tournament. But those look fire. The Cavs is just icy. Obviously, it's different than the maroon color and then white and then even like the Cavs black jersey. I always like the Cavs jerseys, but the icy ones. And then Brooklyn is just cool because it's like a nice, colorful, but it's also simple, regular black and gray white jersey that I like. But what's your one East that you like?
I like the Pistons. I like the cream.
The Pistons, yeah. The Pistons and the Hawks too. The Hawks were close. They kind of look like the Cavs ones a little bit. But no, I was rocking with the Hawks jerseys too. I think they're pretty similar. But you like the Pistons, so I like those too. All right, so give me your West jerseys then.
As far as the West, I love the Mavs. The all white. The all white looks clean for the Mavs jerseys. I'm excited to see those. I like the San Antonio ones.
Mm-hmm.
San Antonio
Mm-hmm.
jerseys look nice too. Like I was saying, man, I'm not gonna lie. I think the East came a little harder this year
They definitely did.
with the jerseys. There's a lot more nice. I like the Golden State ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Golden State ones look good. That would probably be my third.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were a lot of and like there were a lot of ones that don't suck, but there were some that were just plain. Like I like the Houston one, but it just says H Town and it's
Yeah.
white. It's nothing crazy. It looks nice.
The
It's just
Celtics is
nothing crazy.
terrible.
Yeah, didn't like the Clips. Uh,
Don't like the Lakers.
Not a big fan of the Lakers.
Yeah.
The red Memphis, just I don't know. Nothing about Memphis screams red to me,
Yeah.
but they don't look bad.
Yeah. I kind of like when when they make their classic jerseys or whatever type of alternate jerseys just like a completely different color, like how the Hawks did of just like their red and yellow and then white and yellow or
Mm-hmm.
whatever colors they do, and then it's just like we're gonna go blue. And I just think that's cool. Or just like how
Mm.
the Sixers, like I like the red. I have a red Sixers jersey, but it's cool. It's just like we got blue and then we got white, and now let's just go red. So I kind of like when they switch it up. The West that I had, you said Memphis. I like the Memphis ones, obviously, just because it switches the color. And Minnesota, I like too. Minnesota was kind of just like, it's cool enough because it looks clean and it's got like the top that has the design, but then the rest of it is kind of just bland, which is whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the Minnesota one because it looked a little bit icy up top too, and just like the nice. I like like we're talking about retro jerseys. I always like the Minnesota, like everything looks like a lightning bolt type of, or like a dagger, like it looks sharp. So
Okay.
I like those.
Mm.
But obviously I think that covers most of our NBA topic, our basketball topic. Definitely going to talk more about it once preseason starts. Obviously nobody's going to care about this preseason game against the Sixers, and the New Zealand Breakers is what the team's name is, but I bought tickets to that, so I'm gonna see how that is, and hopefully
That'd
see
be
some
good.
of the bench players at least get some time
Mm.
in, even though it's not going to be like crazy competition, but we'll see
No.
how that goes. Moving on, I don't know if I mentioned it in the beginning. Obviously, we're gonna move on to talking about the Phillies. The Phillies is not a team that I know so much about. I can have maybe a general conversation with you about it, but it's definitely more of your realm. So I'll kind of just chime in about stuff, ask you a couple questions, and then we'll go over them. Let's basically just go into it. Currently, we're what, 94 and 66, 67, something like that. At least top three in the whole league. Um, when we're talking about this, how are you feeling, I guess, overall about as we creep into our closer date in October for the playoffs?
Oh man, how am I feeling? So last game of the regular season's today. They wrapped the season up today against the Nationals. They have already secured. They are locked into the 2 seed.
Okay.
They lost last night, and the Dodgers won, so they are now completely out for the 1 seed. Dodgers are the 1, we're the 2, so we still get the first round bye.
Okay.
The only thing that would hurt is if we get to the championship series and we play the Dodgers, they would get home field advantage. But man, this is about as poorly as you can look going into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be too negative, but on the days they pitch well, they don't hit. On the days they hit, they don't pitch well.
Right.
They are very much limping into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, People talk a lot about that first round bye
Yeah.
being a curse because it kills momentum. Well, the Phillies don't have to worry about that. They have no momentum going into the playoffs. It might actually be nice that they get a week off and get themselves right.
Right.
Especially having a lot of the Philly star players are older players that
Mm-hmm.
might need a little bit of a rest towards the end of the season. But
I was watching that Nationals game the other day. I believe the score at the end of the game was what, like 9-1. What was that, the first game that they played in their series, and they lost what, last night
yep,
at the time we're
Zach
recording
Wheeler
this.
pitched great, and they did not hit. Only 2 runs came in a late 2-run home run from Trey Turner to tie the game up, and then Jeff Hoffman went out there and got hammered. But with all the negatives out the way, I'm always confident when the Phillies go into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very good 1-2. Not many teams can match Wheeler and Nola,
Right.
especially when playoff time rolls around. Nola seems to just be a different guy.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest question is who's going to be the 3, Sanchez or Suarez? I would lean towards Sanchez right now because Suarez has been very bad since coming back from injury. I don't think he's fully healthy.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a theme with Suarez struggling at the end of the season, the last 2 years, and then when the playoffs start, just turning it on.
Right.
I believe I saw something the other day. He's given up like 6 and 5 earned runs his last 2 starts of the season, the last 2 years.
Mm.
But he's got a sub-2 ERA
Mm-hmm.
in both of our last playoff runs. So
Right.
if he can turn it on, maybe you have a little more luxury if you win the games Wheeler and Nola pitch,
Mm-hmm.
where you can be like, all right, we're up 2-0. Let's throw Suarez out there, see if he gets himself together.
Right.
But if it's 1-1 or, God forbid, 2-0, I think you need to go with the guy who's been the better pitcher all year, and that's probably been Christopher Sanchez, which is crazy to say because Ranger Suarez, the first couple months of the season was looking like one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Hmm.
And then his injury has just completely derailed his season.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Obviously, I feel like you pointed out a lot of positives and negatives with the team. Do you have anything else to add in terms of what we need to do or what the Phillies need to do to really get themselves involved and hopefully go to the World Series this year?
They need to hit.
Mm-hmm.
They were hitting the snot out of the ball last year.
Mm-hmm.
They hit the Braves like crazy. They hit Strider for the second year in a row. They were hitting. They looked like the best offense in the playoffs, and then looked good at the beginning of the Diamondback series. Came home 3-2 against the Diamondbacks. 2 games at home. Just needed to win one, and the offense just non-existent.
Yeah.
It, signs of slowing down early in the Diamondback series, but then it just completely disappeared, and that's been one of my problems with the Phillies for years now. Not just with this current group of players.
Mm-hmm.
Their offense goes through stretches where they look like one of the best offenses ever assembled, and then they look like a team that has never hit a baseball 2 weeks later.
Right.
It's incredible. They seem to slump as a unit. Where you
Mm-hmm.
want good teams, where when Harper's struggling and Castellanos is struggling, well, at least Bohm and Stott are hitting and Turner's hitting.
Right.
They seem to all get together at once and decide they don't want to hit or they all want to hit. It's
Right.
very
Right.
frustrating to watch. It's part of baseball, going through slumps and
Mm-hmm.
going through highs and lows, but man, their highs are very high and their lows are very rock bottom.
Right.
Consistency, man. I'm a little nervous. I'm not. They have a lot of good bullpen arms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they picked up Estevez near the near the trade deadline to come and cement the closer role.
Mm-hmm.
He's been good, but he's been shaky.
Right.
A lot of teams that win the World Series, they'll have that ninth inning guy who comes in and just shuts the door. You don't even have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the Phillies have that.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of good arms, between Strom and Hoffman and Kirkring. Like, they got some guys
Yeah.
that are going to pitch well. Hopefully Alvarado gets himself right for the playoffs. But, when it's ninth inning and you got that lead, you need someone to come in and cement. That's what hurt him last year against the Diamondbacks too. Craig Kimbrell coming in and blowing saves.
Yeah. All right. I guess after going through all those options and ideas that you have for what the Phillies basically need to do to get to the World Series and possibly win the World Series, do you think out of the Phillies, the Sixers, the Eagles, and everybody else that's a Philadelphia sports team, do you think that they're the closest team to win a ring or win a championship in the near future?
It's a toss up for me between them and the Sixers. I have confidence in them where I've seen them go deeper in the playoffs. They were just in the World Series 2 years ago. And I think they have a good team poised for a playoff run.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're close. I think the Sixers are close too. But the thing that worries me about them is I don't know what they look like past the second round of the playoffs.
Right.
Never got to see that. I'm hoping I get to see it this year. I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping I see it every year, but every year it seems like something new. Some way I couldn't even predict of disappointment from them not getting out the second round.
100%.
But no, I think the Phillies, like I said, they scare me because the offense can completely disappear sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they are, with the way their starting pitching is set up and the way they hit home runs, I think they're poised for a deep run in the playoffs. So I think they're the closest of all the teams. A year ago at this time, I would have said the Eagles, but
Yeah.
they have quite the roller coaster ride the last year. I still think they're a good football team. I
Yeah.
still think they'll be in the playoffs. They'll be in the conversation, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not as confident as I was a year ago at this time.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the Eagles eventually too. It's recording on a Sunday. I think they're playing at 1 o'clock today. But we'll definitely talk more about that because I know a lot of people that we know love to talk about the Eagles as well and everything that's involved that a little bit more versed in the football world. Going back to the main question though, I basically just think overall the Sixers are probably closer with my very little knowledge of the Phillies and everything that you're saying about them with, it might be a toss up, it might be 50-50. They'll make a run for sure because they're that good to be one of the best in the league. we really just got to see how these Sixers are gonna mesh. I think obviously in a dream world, if everybody's healthy, we should have won it last year. To be honest, in a dream world, we could have won that last year. I think we could have beat the Celtics and we could have matched up with them. We could have forced a lot of the issues through Embiid, and if he was just healthy the whole time, really feel like maybe I might be delusional, but I feel like he really could have just dominated Porzingis and then had Maxi, be a second option for them, and just everybody being another option. But we should have got through the Knicks easy, and especially if the Bucks were hurt, we could have went through the Pacers with no problem. This year, with everything that we mentioned in the beginning about all our new bench people and getting Paul George, we have to be at least. I hope this isn't a recurring thing, even though it is now. But we have to at least get into the Eastern Conference Finals with this team. There's no other reason that we shouldn't, other than that we have injuries. Point
I
blank.
feel like we have
Period.
the same conversation every single year.
Paul George, obviously, I think Paul George scares me the same way that the Phillies offense, like you said, would probably scare you in the way of like he just doesn't produce in the playoffs like he does during the regular season. I don't know what it is, if it's the pressure, if now being on a new team with an added pressure of being in the Eastern Conference Finals or being in the second round, if that's going to weigh on his shoulders. But I think that's where he gets messed up, is that we don't need you to be the star player. We don't need you to
No.
take over. Like we got our two guys right now. We're like we
Yeah,
need you as that extra to help us when we need. Like if you're averaging 15 points, a couple rebounds, and a couple assists, that's all we need. As long as Embiid's healthy and Maxi's healthy, we're getting our buckets regardless.
these last couple of years with him on the Clippers, he hasn't really had Kawhi there at the end to count on. So
Yeah,
it really has just kind of been the Paul George show.
yeah, yeah.
And then you
Even
get the James Harden experience in the playoffs where he wins you the game single handedly one night, and then the next night
doesn't show up.
you feel like you're watching a different player.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna fit him a little bit differently. But he got a lot of like went a lot farther when he was number two to Russ, and then when he went to the Clippers, Kawhi being out a lot. They had good games when they played together because Kawhi was the main guy, but when it's Paul George being that main guy, then it doesn't survive.
Uh,
So he's
yeah,
always
that
gonna
ain't
be a
it.
number two in my eyes. But that doesn't mean that he's a terrible player or anything.
No.
He's just not the one. So
And now he gets to be a flex too,
yeah,
even a three with Maxi.
it's I feel like it's a great opportunity for him if he plays this role and doesn't get mixed up anywhere. It should be good if it all meshes out the way it's supposed to, and we'll see what happens. Granted, no injuries, but other
Yeah.
than that,
Oh,
I think that's mostly everything that we got. Obviously, like I said, I want to talk more about the Eagles next time. Want to have like a whole dedicated section to talking about not only the Eagles, but we can talk about the rest of the NFL too. This is JK Philly. We are talking about Philadelphia sports, but I'm not hesitant to talk about the leagues. That's the whole point of talking about sports is your competition. So you got to talk about other people than that. What we talked about was just giving like opening thoughts about some of the players that we added to the Sixers and how well they were gonna do. We talked about Paul George, and then we also talked about, or Kev mostly talked about the Phillies and what they need to do to be successful during their times in the playoffs.
Interesting. You know what I forgot we did sign though?
Mm.
The French dude.
Yabusele,
Yeah, I forgot we signed him.
what do you think about him?
Mm, I honestly don't know because anyone that plays for their country in the Olympics is a different person on like an NBA team.
I was thinking that too. I forgot to mention that when we were talking about it. Of just the amount of effort that they showed during the Olympics compared to when they're in the league. Because he was
But
playing, I think, for a French team when he got out of the NBA.
yeah, I'm about to say so he was in the NBA. Maybe he might come back hungrier. I don't. I honestly don't know his game. Is he like a postman? Like he's got post moves. He's a slasher.
He
Like I
seems
saw
like
the.
he seems like he's a defensive wing that can get you a couple layups slash dunks here and there, but he's not
Okay.
a shooter. He's like Kev was saying earlier. He's gonna be probably at the bottom or the end of our bench.
I
But he
know.
could give some good minutes maybe.
if he plays defense, the scoring for us isn't an issue.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be an issue. If he can play defense, like, and not be a Tyrese Steibel
Right.
liability, then he can move up on the bench. I feel like, but like I
Matisse,
said, did I say what? Who did I say?
Tyrese Steibel.
Did he? I thought he said Matisse. I wasn't even paying attention.
I didn't know what I said either. Trust Kev, but yeah, not be a Matisse Steibel.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. Kind of just cut off the video towards the end. Thank you to Kev again. Thank you to Sean for coming in, asking a couple questions, give us some discourse about what we were thinking about the Sixers. Like I said in the beginning, if you enjoyed listening to the episode, please drop a follow, subscribe. Tell your friends about it. We're going to start talking about this a little bit more, especially since, like we said in the video, that our love for the game is really more surrounded by the Sixers. So we're getting ready for the upcoming season. We're going to be talking during the whole playoffs, so stay tuned. Subscribe. Thank you for listening.